From the heights, one can see the city destroyed with a giant crater on the ground. A young man is with his face dirty with blood, is holding a boy by the neck, about to throw a punch. The white-haired boy laughs and says he knew. He looks to the side and says that the protagonist is different from those useless ones. Looking at the ground, there are some bodies that appear to have been massacred in a fierce battle. The protagonist, with tears streaming and hatred in his eyes, tells him to shut up. Then the boy with a sadistic smile tells the protagonist to kill him because now he is the only one who can do it. But he refuses and says that he will not be the one to kill him. Next, he grabs the boy by the collar. And looking into his eyes, he says he promised his team that he would put him in jail so that justice would be done. As the rain falls, he says the boy will be punished by the law, but in his mind, the protagonist says that he still regrets not having killed him. Sometime later on TV, a photo of the white-haired boy appears with the headline that someone, the worst villain in history, was captured, but there were many deaths in battle. The presenter says that the villain who made the whole world tremble with fear was sentenced to death. And in the courtroom, there are several armed soldiers while Huang is imprisoned in a straitjacket. The TV lady explains that a device was used to suppress his powers, but he is with an unconcerned smile. He will be imprisoned in the 5th sublevel of the prison for cruel villains called Ruculus. A young man watches in silence as the presenter says that some of the heroes who fought alongside Ganyu died. Hearing this, the young man shows a bitter reaction. The presenter continues saying that the funeral for the heroes of equality will be held tonight while on TV. One by one, their faces are shown. The protagonist continues in silence with a somber expression. And before the TV lady says anything else, someone turns off the TV. Ganyu then looks back and sees a young man in uniform with a friendly smile saying that he should be lying down and not watching TV since he is still recovering. This is Gangu Seo, the protagonist's brother and a prison officer at Ruculus prison. Gangu calls him by name, and staring at his own hands, he begins to reflect. Then with a bloodthirsty look, he says he himself should have killed Huang. Gangu says he made a promise to his companions, and in a memory, we see the leader of the heroes saying that their job is to save people, not kill. She continues talking to the rest of the group that they should not kill even if it is a terrible villain because even criminals have the right to be judged because they are also people. Ganyu comments that it sounds cool but asks what they would do if the heroes were killed. Then the captain asks him to promise that he will not kill anyone no matter what happens. He remains silent. Then in the hospital room, his brother says he agrees with her words. He says that only the law can condemn people, but it is agents like him who need to execute the sentences. He then shares confidential information that Huang will be executed next week and that he will be present. He assures that Ganyu did his job as a hero, but now he must leave the rest to the prison officers. Then he gets up from his chair and calls the protagonist to say goodbye to his companions. Going to the funeral, several bouquets and thank you letters were placed on the heroes' graves, while there were also protests in favor of the villain's execution. In front of the hero's altar full of flowers, Ganyu and his brother have sad looks. They leave a flower. Then a week passed, and on the day of Huang's execution, he escaped from his transport stretcher. Then another funeral, but this time for Ganyu's brother. He cries and wonders why. The criminal who should have been punished survived, while his brother who ended up being killed. And then sitting on the ground next to the altar, someone calls his name. A woman in uniform accompanied by 2 other guards says it's been a while since she saw him. This is the prison director who wants to talk to the protagonist. Ganyu does not respond and just stares. She hands him a tablet with a video. Then he questions what this is. She says it is today's video showing what happened at Huang's execution. In the video, several agents are carrying the villain on a cargo cart. Huang calls the agent next to him. Then he says that he looks like Ganyu and asks if he is his brother, which surprises Gangho. The villain questions if he is an agent because he has no powers and asks which of the 2 brothers is the oldest. But Gangho does not respond a word. Huang then speaks again, and he asks the protagonist's brother how he feels about killing someone. Gangho is incredulous at the question, and the villain says that he is a prison officer and executioner. He bets that Gangho has already killed people and asks what the feeling is. The protagonist's brother remains silent, but Huang says he feels it is very easy. Gangho is again shocked by what the villain is saying. Huang, with a sadistic smile, says that it only takes a gentle touch, and they burst like a soap bubble. The protagonist's brother gets angry, and then he says that he fights against a horrible sense of guilt even when he needs to execute scum like him. He starts having nightmares after nightmares. In his dreams, the condemned appear, and they say that Gangho is a murderer just like them. The prisoners always come back to torment him in his dreams. Huang says that despite this, he still works in the penitentiary. Then Gangho says he is just doing his job as a prison officer because someone needs to do it. After that, already in the execution room, the villain is properly placed in the execution chair. Gangho asks the prisoner if he has any last words. Huang, with a frightening smile, asks again who is older between him and his brother, but Gangho ignores it and starts the execution. Then the countdown begins from 3, 2, 1. And just at the moment the button is pressed, everything goes dark in the video. Ganyu doesn't understand. The director explains that right at the moment of the execution, the energy of Ruculus fell due to an unidentified electromagnetic pulse. The video screen remains black. In the prison, the guards wonder if it was a blackout, and Gang Ho is already looking for where the prisoner it is, until he hears a voice. Beside him appears Huang, freed from his restraints with a smile on his face, saying that he knew only Gang Yu could kill him. Gang Ho yells for the other agents to get down, and then an explosion occurs. Smoke fills the corridor. An agent calls for backup on the radio, saying the prisoner broke the suppression device. While he is repeating the message on the radio, a hand touches his shoulder. Beside him is Huang, smiling, and before the agent could say anything, his face begins to swell. The prisoner, still smiling, says that was a blast. Suddenly, the agent's head bursts and pieces fly everywhere. Gang Ho is horrified to see this. The psychopath begins to approach. Then he says he thinks Gang Ho is the older brother and asks if he is right. The protagonist's brother grabs his baton, and in a desperate move, tries to hit the prisoner. But before he could finish the blow, it was enough for Huang to raise his hand to make his arm twist completely. It was in the blink of an eye. Gang Ho fell to the ground screaming in pain, and Huang asks if he got it right. The protagonist's trembling brother does not give up and grabs his baton again, telling the prisoner that he deserves to be punished by law. But the psychopath looks indifferently at him, and then Gang Ho goes on the attack again, saying that justice will be done. But it was enough for Huang to raise his arm that in a matter of seconds, the protagonist's brother was crushed. Blood flew everywhere. On the ground is a ball of meat that until then was Gang Ho. The only thing left intact was his hat. Then Huang says he will have to ask the protagonist if he got it right. After finishing watching the video, Gang Yu is with a look of anger. Xian begins to explain. The unidentified attacks ended up releasing all the prisoners from all floors without their suppression devices. The good news is that they managed to prevent them from escaping the prison, but many of the officers ended up being trapped with them. Gang Yu, with blood in his eyes, asks who launched the attack, but Xian says they are still investigating. Then she apologizes for asking something like this at the funeral of the hero's brother, and asks if he could suppress the rebellion in Rukula's prison. Without hesitation, Gang Yu agrees, but with one condition. He remembers what his companions said. The prison is currently in total chaos with some prisoners trying to open the door. His companions believe that heroes save people and should not kill. Suddenly, the door begins to open. For a moment, all the prisoners stop to observe. Then they start to celebrate as they run towards the exit. Gang Yu's brother said that only the law could condemn people, but it is the executioners who carry out the sentence. In a matter of seconds, the prisoners were all thrown away with an explosive blow. Seeing this, everyone was confused. At the door stood a man. Gang Yu did not want to enter the prison as a hero. With a deadly look, he introduces himself as the new prison officer because earlier he had asked to enter Ruculus as an executioner. Upon hearing that name, an expression of surprise immediately appeared on the prisoners' faces. They begin to wonder why there is a hero wearing an agent's uniform. But soon their faces become malicious, thinking that Gang Yu is a fool they can take advantage of. Then they decide to attack him. But he is not intimidated and remains still. Then, when they are close enough, he throws a punch. And with just one punch, he manages to pierce the bodies of the prisoners, making them split in half and fly away. The impact was so strong that it created a trail of carnage among the prisoners, who were all astonished by what they saw. They couldn't believe what had just happened. Gang Yu begins to test the built-in microphone in his uniform, and then calmly begins to explain to everyone that by order of the government, everyone there from the ground floor, and each of the sublevels, up to the 5th sublevel, where Huang is located. Upon hearing the protagonist's voice, Huang gets excited, but Gang Yu only wishes to fulfill his brother's duty, and then he completes saying that all of them will be executed immediately. The prisoners can't believe what they heard. Soon they start to scream, asking what the hell he's talking about. But Gang Yu remains serene. Then he asks if they think it's unfair to die after having killed so many people. One of the prisoners in the back starts to complain. His name is Halida, and he killed 12 people, so he says he didn't kill that many. Another named Brooks, who was arrested for killing 7 people, says he has more fingers on his hands than the number of people he killed. A chubby one named Kaidi, who was arrested for child abduction, sexual assault, and homicides, says he killed fewer than 5 people. And then everyone starts to ask who he is to decide he's going to kill them and start asking for a lawyer, saying they are also human beings. Silent in the middle of the crowd, one of them seems to be devising a plan. He thinks they are making too much noise. His name is Choi Go-won, who was arrested for sexual assault and for killing 8 people. Choi begins to plan something while the agent is distracted with the other prisoners. Gang Yu remains serene in front of the complaints. Then Choi takes advantage of the shouting and quickly passes through all the prisoners without anyone noticing. But he sees out of the corner of his eye something approaching. It was Gang Yu's leg that hit a kick right in the face of the fugitive. Immediately, the other prisoners fell silent, and as Choi's body falls bleeding to the ground, the new agent says he will give them a choice. He says they can calmly lock the control device and return to their cells to wait for their execution. The second option is to die by his hands right there. The prisoners are afraid to hear that, but one of them curses the protagonist and asks what he's saying. Then he says that naturally the best option is the last one. He explains that they are going to die anyway, so it's better to die rebelling. And with a cynical smile, he asks if the terms of the negotiation are not irrational in that situation. But Ganju replies that it is not a negotiation because the last thing he can offer them is mercy. Immediately, all the prisoners begin to tremble for their lives and even come to question why a hero of equality is there. Some prisoners decide to use the control device again. The sarcastic prisoner begins to open his mouth with a glow coming out of it. Then he lets out a sonic scream, and this makes all the prisoners fall silent again. He raises his finger and calls for everyone to listen to him. Then he says that even if he is a hero of equality, there is no need to make a deal with just one strong man, because he has already managed to kill a second-class hero through teamwork, which leaves the other prisoners surprised and incredulous. Upon hearing this, the prisoners who were about to surrender begin to smile at the possibility of defeating the new agent. Then the prisoner with the sonic scream says there is no need to be scared and says they will kill him to regain their freedom. After hearing that, Ganyu realizes that he must be the leader of the trash that the officer had mentioned. In a memory, the director explains that Ruculus separates prisoners depending on the level of danger they represent. On the first floor are those who killed many people. There are more than 300 serial killers. Heading to the sublevel of the first floor are 100 who have put cities at risk. The second floor has more than 30 who put a metropolis in danger. And on the third floor are 10 people who put the nation in danger. The sublevel of the fourth floor has 5 people who put the continent in danger. And finally, on the sublevel of the fifth floor, there are only 3 people, including Huang, who have put the entire world in danger. Si-un asks if he thinks it's a lot, but says the number of people to deal with will be much smaller. Then she talks about the prisoners of the second sublevel. There are 2 young people there who use some kind of power that holds people by the head, and then order them to confess their sins. Already on the sublevel of the 5th floor, where Huan finds another girl who has freed herself from the restraints of the straitjacket. He holds a ball of meat in his hand and says he didn't know there was someone there, while the director explains to the protagonist that they are not very friendly with each other. The girl looks at Huang indifferently. He gives a sadistic smile and says he will be able to pass the time until Gangyu gets there. Then the director continues explaining that the first floor is unique. She shows a photo and says all the prisoners are united around that prisoner. In the photo is the prisoner who shouted his name is Hillason. He has a special ability that strengthens comrades through the sound he emits. Back in prison, Ganju says the prisoner killed 7 people in a hospital and counting the heroine totals 8 people. But Hillason corrects him and says it was 10 people. Then with a malevolent smile, he says the heroine was pregnant with twins. The protagonist stares in silence. Then he calls the director on the microphone of the uniform and asks how strong the prison is because he will need a little strength, but she tells him not to worry because she guarantees that the prison will not collapse. The protagonist is relieved that he will not need to hold back his strength. Hillason says he is bluffing. He says the protagonist did nothing even when he was a hero of equality and bets that he captured Huang using his colleagues as bait. Then with a sadistic smile, he says he will send him to where his colleagues are. Then he activates his ability with a scream, ordering the other prisoners to kill Ganju. The prisoners begin to feel strengthened thanks to the ability. They feel they are overflowing with strength. Hillason calls all the prisoners from there and orders them to attack. But Ganju just kicks with a dark red aura, and all the prisoners are cut in half without even being able to reach him. Hillason and other prisoners were paralyzed to see that he doesn't understand what just happened. In a matter of seconds, all the prisoners who went on the attack were shattered on the ground, and this leaves Hillason terrified. Without wasting time, Gangyu begins to launch his next attack. He raises his leg high and stomps on the ground with force. His energy looking like lightning attacks all the prisoners, throwing them up. The impact was so strong that it reverberated throughout the prison. Somewhere inside his cell, a prisoner with a mask on his face is startled to hear the bang and immediately recognizes that Ganju is there. The prisoners were thrown up with that attack. Everyone was screaming as they fell. But look him up. Ganyu is coming from above with energy emanating from his hand about to punch. His hand turns into a claw as he begins to activate his ability mode. Upon hearing this, the prisoners scream and try to attack him to stop his blow. But Ganju activates mode 1 of his ability. An array of energy pierces all the prisoners at the same time, forming a web of death. In a matter of seconds, the prisoners were cut in half. Hillason didn't even have time to react. He couldn't believe it. With a single attack, Ganju left a pile of bodies behind. The prisoners had been slaughtered. Then the protagonist gives the report over the microphone. All the prisoners on the first floor were executed, so he will proceed to solitary. Ganyu wonders how many people were killed. He no longer knows if they were dozens or hundreds. In a corridor, he finds 2 more prisoners and orders them to choose. Either they put on the suppression device or they will be killed right there. The strong prisoner is outraged by this, and then he goes to attack him. But it only took a kick to explode the prisoner's head, while Ganju, unconcerned, remembers that Si-un said there were about 300 prisoners on the first floor. The other man is frightened to see the way the other prisoner was killed, and immediately says he will put on the device. Ganyu tells him to pick up the device. The man extends his hands with a look of fear and asks for the device. But he makes a sadistic smile and a purple energy ball appears in his hands. Then he fires an energy beam at Ganju and asks if the protagonist thought he would obey him. But after finishing his raid, Ganyu is intact. One of the villains that his companion Tomei captured said he feels sorry for people who don't have physical type superpowers. After Tone captures her with her chain ability, the villain says that people with that kind of power will never know the exhilarating sensation of crushing a person with their own hands. And as Gangyu punches the prisoner, he wonders if this should give a feeling of euphoria. But he says it just feels like breaking an egg with his fist. Upon reaching solitary, he enters the code to open the cell. Inside is a man, and he says he was wondering what all that noise was. The masked prisoner, upon seeing the protagonist, confirms that it was him responsible for the noise. He asks how long it has been. This is Chiok Fielder in prison for cannibalism and desecration of corpses. He stands up and comments that the hero got another job, although he doesn't seem to have a good face. Then Ganju offers him to choose between putting on the device or dying. The prisoner takes off his mask and says he didn't know they would meet like this. In a memory, Chiok is tied to his stone post, tied by Tomei's chains. But at that moment, Gangyu realizes something. A pot of blood dripping next to his severed hand. Chiok asks if it looks tasty, and with a sick smile, he says they were killed and cooked recently, so it would be delicious. Upon hearing this, Gangyu says the villain leaves him no choice. He already activates his power. His companions look worried, and Gangyu says he will have to kill the villain. But someone yells his name, the captain of the heroes. With a sad look, she says no. Gangyu walked away annoyed. She comments that he seemed very uncomfortable and the heroes decided to subdue him instead of killing. In the cell, Gangyu is already with his power activated and says that if he does not choose to put on the device, then he will consider that he chose death. The prisoner asks Gangyu if he knew why he killed so many people. But in a quick move, the protagonist rips off the prisoner's head and says he's not interested. But a voice continues to speak. Chiok is still alive and says he killed people, so they would remember him. Then he continues saying that when he kills someone, he becomes the most memorable person in their lives. And thanks to his power, he can use it to record his memory in the eyes of terrified victims, using his hallucination powers so they never forget him even in death. And the proof of this is that he remembers everyone he killed. Then he asks Gangyu if he should show each one of them. So Chiok begins to use his power to bring a girl, but before he could react, his arm is cut off with a quick blow. As his arm bleeds, Gangyu wonders if that's why he's a solitary prisoner. He forms a sword with his energy while saying he really wants to stop Chiok's chattering mouth. Then he comments that his power can't be fast enough to dodge Gangyu's attack. Chiok, before dying, asks the protagonist if he remembers how many people he has killed so far. Gangyu says he doesn't remember because trash like him don't deserve to be remembered. But he is surprised to see something. His fellow heroes appear in front of him. The captain looks at him with sorrow, asking him not to do that. Gangyu is speechless. His companions calling his name, and Chiok, nervous and with a sadistic smile, says maybe the protagonist will remember this. But while Ganju's companions call his name, he does not hesitate, and with a single blow cuts all the hallucinations, which then dissipate immediately. Ganju, with a fierce look, asks if the cheap tricks are over. Chiok, seeing this, is speechless. Then he says he can't believe Ganju cut his colleagues without hesitation. The protagonist approaches while explaining that his companions were already dead, making the man look at him with fear, as Gangyu cuts him in half with a single blow while saying they are all illusions in the end. Then he says he is no longer a hero, but a prison guard. Chiok Fallen responds that he is not a simple prison guard, and in his last breaths, he says Ganju is nothing more than a monster not much different from Huang. Hearing this, Ganju looks surprised. On the 5th sublevel, Huang is still holding the meatball in his hand. He says there wasn't even a single act of resistance from the girl lying on the ground. She remains silent. Huang wants to know when Ganju will get down there, and he wonders if maybe he should go up. Outside, it's already night. From the top of a mountain, 3 people watch what happens in the prison. A man calls the woman Sinka Nim and asks when she wants them to start intervening. But she is watching the prison security cameras on a tablet until Ganyu appears. Seeing him, she is happy and says he will be her husband. The man can't believe what he heard. Then Sinka repeats that Ganyu will be her husband. The man named Canis says Mrs. Sinka already wanted Huang as her husband. The woman on his other side is called Kado, and she agrees with Canis, saying that's why they launched the attack to save Huang. Canis says Ganju is a hero and an obstacle to human progress. The woman who is watching says he was a hero, but now doesn't seem to be one. Canis and Kato say she has to choose only one because polygamy is a crime, and Sinka is undecided about which of the two to choose. Then with an excited look, she decides she will choose the one who survives. With a smile, she wonders which of the two it will be. In the cell, the director appears to congratulate Ganju on his work. After seeing the fallen bodies, she comments that he didn't waste time and cleaned the first floor in an instant. Then she suggests that he rest a little since the prisoners will become exponentially more powerful, but Ganyu denies. He wants to go down immediately, so he asks her to open the door. She agrees, but before he goes down, Si-un has a favorite ask. She says she is still receiving signals, because there are still living guards on the lower floors sending signals. So she asks him to help them so they can return to their families. Ganju asks if Si-un knows how many agents are alive on each floor, but she says she doesn't know the exact number because all communication devices are broken below the first floor except for one. On one of the lower floors, an agent crawls on the ground. The cameras and all other communication devices on the 5th sublevel are working. The agent screams, begging for help, but behind him is Huang, accompanied by a flying woman. The villain just raises his hand. Then the guard starts to swell and explodes, throwing ketchup everywhere. Si-eun says she's sure someone wants them to see what's happening down there. After hearing this, Ganju says he will go ahead. Then the agents warn they are ready to open the door to the first sublevel. Then the director grants permission. As the door opens, she says again to be careful because there is a difference in strength between the prisoners of the first and second floors. They are like heaven and earth. But the door barely opened, and two prisoners suddenly appeared and hit a blow on Ganju. One of them calls him an idiot, and the other asks if the fastest is the winner. Immediately, Ganju begins to be shot by several prisoners. They were already prepared because they knew the protagonist would go there. Seeing this, the director is worried about Ganju. But right in front of her, a prisoner appears saying she should worry about herself because she also has her own problems. He notices something when he sees her up close. Then seeing that she is the head of the guards, he grabs her by the neck and says it's a rare opportunity. He says he always wanted to take that presumptuous look off her, and he wonders what he should do. Then he yells to the other prisoners, saying whoever catches the director first will have an opportunity. But he soon loses his speech when he looks back. All the prisoners were dead on the ground. He doesn't understand what happened. But when he looks up, Ganju is coming from above with an energy-charged punch, and again with a single punch. He shatters the prisoner. The impact knocks the director to the ground. Then Ganju warns. He says for her not to go down to the next floor, because it's not safe. Si-eun, still somewhat surprised by the situation, agrees. But when Ganju is leaving, she calls him and says that the villain Tomoki captured by Toma is in isolation on the first sublevel. He says he knows and goes ahead. Meanwhile, in the solitary cell on the first sublevel, the prisoners, after hearing the bang of Ganju's blow, begin to wonder if the prisoners managed to escape. But a woman calls them stupid and says of course not, then asks if they think there is someone among them capable of making such a big noise. This is Tomoki, who has already killed 28 heroes. She says she told the prisoners to stay, but they didn't want to listen. She's a former heroine who believes they became villains because they don't think with their heads. Suddenly, a big guy calls her a bitch. He asks if she wants to die, but she is not intimidated and questions if he thinks he can kill her. Tomoki says everyone there is in prison for killing citizens and asks if they have ever killed someone with superpowers. Then she questions if they have even fought against someone with superpowers, but thinks not because they wouldn't be there if they have fought. The big guy then says he's about to kill a person with a special ability and starts to activate his ability. But with a single blow from Tomoki, he is cut in half. Then she asks who here wants to kill or die, as she has already captured countless villains while she was a heroine. So she learned to fight against people with superpowers, and it was with this knowledge that she killed many heroes. Then she says she will teach them. If they join forces, she will tell how to hunt a person with special abilities. And most importantly, she knows about Ganju's abilities. The prisoners are surprised to hear that she knows about the protagonist's abilities. Then they ask how she knows this. Tomoki says she had a long career as a heroine and therefore has a good notion of most of the hero's information. One of the prisoners asks what difference that makes. He says that Ganju was part of the equality group, which was only made up of first-class heroes, and that is different from a third-class hero like her. Hearing this, Tomoki laughs. Then she says that after Losa became leader of equality, there were reforms in the hero industry. She redefined the meaning of hero and forbade them from killing villains. In addition, she often set up teams to train together. And finally, the hero classification system was abolished. Tomoki then says that when Ganju became a member of equality, it was when the system was abolished. No one expected him to get in since he had no notable achievements, and there were even rumors that he had powerful connections. The prisoner says he has never seen Ganju fight, but by the short time it took him to clean the first floor, he must be at least a second-class hero or a level above them. Tomoki says the first floor was full of riffraff. She says that even they would be able to easily eliminate the prisoners from above. On that floor, all the prisoners had murdered over 1,000 people each, and the one with the most murders on his account is the one talking to Tomoki. Then she says she's not saying Ganju is weak because he is certainly strong, but she knows what his weakness is and therefore guarantees they can hunt him. Speech asks if she's sure about his weakness. She then asks if they have any other option besides that. Next, she asks what they are going to do because the enemy is approaching. The prisoners decide to join her. Speech remains silent until Tomoki asks if he will also go. He decides to join too and asks what the plan will be. Centuries ago, when superpowers appeared in humans, researchers classified them into 3 main categories. The ability to transform or strengthen the body is known as physical type. The ability to create something out of nothing is the creation type superpower, and those not included in the other categories are of the special type. In prison, the prisoners stare at him, and there is Ganju walking calmly. A blue ray interconnects the prisoners by the eyes. This is Tomoki's ability, capable of allowing communication by brain waves, which also allows them to see what the other prisoners are seeing. She knows that Ganju's superpower is of the physical type like hers. Tomoki remembers when she realized she had discovered his weakness when she was still a heroine and saw him training. He was using a training robot, a robot made for combat training. Back in prison, Ganju again offers 2 options: either put on the suppression device or die. but a purple ray begins to shine from inside his cell, and a shot hits him, just like in training with the robot. Tomoki asked the prisoners to use the cell doors as a shield, so that users of creation and special abilities could attack from a distance. A sequence of shots were fired. Speech says the protagonist is just taking the blows as Tomoki had said. She knew there was a reason for Ganyu not to dodge the attacks. The reason is because it wasn't worth it for him to dodge. So thinking about this, Tomoki added one thing to the long-range attacks, and suddenly Ganyu is caught by surprise. Several suppression devices were attached to him through the long-range attacks. From afar, a guy uses his ability to fix the devices. The plan seemed to have been a success. Earlier, Tomoki sent the prisoners to search the guards' corpses for devices. Speech says they are devices from the first sub-level and asks if they will work on him. But Tomoki says that 10 of these should be enough to suppress a second-class hero and 15 for a first-class hero. Then she gives this task to Million, who has the power to attach an object to a target. Next, she says that just to be safe, they will attach 30 devices. Ganyu is full of devices on his neck, arms, and legs. Seeing this, the prisoners get excited. But there were 3 mistakes in Tomoki's strategy. The devices began to break. That was the first mistake. In a matter of seconds, Ganyu was released. The prisoners were without reaction, and right after he punched several prisoners into the air. The devices didn't work because Ganyu's strength far exceeds that of a first-class hero. Speech reports that all devices were destroyed, while Tomoki is speechless. After the attack, the surviving prisoners begin to run, and Tomoki passes on the message to prepare the next strategy. Then someone tells Ganyu not to move. A prisoner is using an agent as a hostage and threatens to kill him if the protagonist moves. Other prisoners are also holding 2 more hostages while trying to negotiate. But before they could finish talking, Ganyu uses his ability and launches a ray that pierces the prisoners, killing them and freeing the guards in a matter of moments. That was the second mistake. Despite Ganyu's power being in the physical type, it is also of the special type. And there was also the third failure. One of the prisoners calls the protagonist, says he will put the control device back on, and then asks for his life to be spared. But Ganyu kills him before he could finish speaking. This was Tomiko's third mistake, trying to use a strategy for someone to whom that strategy does not apply. Ganyu uses his power to attack all the prisoners around, even those who are far away. Then with an annoyed look, he says it's too late. From afar, Speech was following through brain waves. Seeing this, he becomes frightened, desperate, and asking Tomoki if there is another plan, but she ignores him and refuses to believe what just happened. He screams saying he shouldn't have believed her, but Tomoki continues to question why the devices didn't work even though there were 30. Speech says he will put on the controller, and she tells him to shut up. Then she gets angry and pierces his chest with an attack. Then she starts to ask who he thinks he is to raise his voice because they are not on the same level just because they are together. After killing Speech, she comments that she had more than enough to contain a first-class hero. But he managed to break everything, and frightened, she wonders why he didn't fight on the front line since he is so strong. None of that made sense to her. Suddenly there's a noise. A penitentiary agent was crawling. Noticing that he was seen, he starts to cry, desperately begging for help. Then he raises his arm about to attack him, but his hand is cut off. It takes her a while to understand, and behind her is Ganyu. Initially, he calls her a heroine, but soon corrects himself and calls her a prisoner, then asks if she has any last words. The woman starts to laugh nervously because she knows she's in trouble. Ganyu asks if those are her last words, but she asks if it's true that he is the only hero of equality still alive. When he confirms, she chuckles, and then asks if Tomei also died, but Ganyu remains silent. With that, Tomiko has confirmation that Tomei really died. She comments that she told her silly little sister not to become a heroine, then says she can't believe he killed so many people being part of equality, and asks if the other heroes know about it. She tries to provoke, saying he knows that Losa tried to change the hero industry, but wonders if she wouldn't be sad to know that he undid all her work. Ganyu stares at her for a while and says her last words were too long. A while ago, when Tomoki became a heroine, she felt there was something wrong with the hero industry. They hunted villains, and this gave immunity even when citizens were killed in the process, and they were above the law. In an alley, a thug holds a girl, pointing a knife at her neck when a hero arrives. He yells at the hero not to move, but in a single attack, the criminal is cut in half, which also ends up killing the girl. While the hero gives a malicious smile and says the mission was accomplished, Tomoki was called Bliss for a simple reason. She was walking hand in hand with her younger sister, who said she always helped her. That girl was Tomei, who said she was very incredible, just like a hero. Tomei had no superpower and depended a lot on her sister. But there was also something twisted somewhere in Tomoki's mind, because she agreed with Tomei, saying that she really is incredible with a somewhat arrogant tone. She had a job as a heroine, the job of saving people, but instead of feeling proud, she did it to feel a sense of superiority over others. Tomoki continued with her activities until she killed a villain for the first time during a mission, on her first murder. For the first time in her life, she felt an overwhelming sense of superiority that she had never felt before. Tomoki realized that for her, killing people was exhilarating. After that, she didn't stop killing anyone indiscriminately, whether villain or citizen, and even heroes. But Tomoki's favorite type of murder was killing her weaker colleagues. She loved the expression of surprise and the feeling of betrayal to the point of getting lost with the delight of that sensation. The expression of seeing a colleague begging to be spared. That left Tomoki on cloud 9, and she never got tired of that feeling, but no crime goes unpunished. Tomi found it suspicious that her sister came home late at night smelling of blood, so one day she decided to follow her. And in a dark alley, she witnessed a murder scene caused by her older sister. Tomi is astonished by that. Tomoki says she told her not to leave the house so late. Then she says there's no way, and with a sadistic smile asks if Tomi wants to join her. Her younger sister doesn't believe what she heard, and Tomoki says she'll do it alone. But Tomi screams, and then chains appear out of nowhere, which end up preventing Tomoki's hand. Tomi ended up awakening her ability. That was her first activity as a future heroine. After that day, Tomi became a heroine and continued to pursue her sister, who became a villain, until one day she finally caught Tomoki. When captured, she says that Tomi is no longer calling her sister, and that is sad. Then she says her power got stronger, but that's even sadder since her power is not physical type. She says those without physical abilities are really pitiful, but Tomi remains silent. It is at this moment that Tomoki says they will never understand how thrilling it is to crush people directly. And then she says her little sister will never understand her, but Tomi says she never had a sister like her. Back in the cell, Tomoki asks if her sister died without suffering. Then Ganju talks about when she felt in a battle against Juan. She was in pain, and in her last words she asked her sister to save her. He says Tomi died looking for her older sister. Tomoki says she shouldn't have asked that. Then she activates her ability, and says hearing that only made her feel worse. Right after finishing speaking, she goes on the attack. The protagonist remains serene, and when she hits him with her blade, right before his eyes, he simply disappears and reappears right behind her. Tomoki tries to react in time, but Ganju lands a kick, making her be thrown against the wall. A lot of dust starts to rise after the impact, but Ganju remains in the same place. Then from inside the dust, Tomoki emerges with another attack, but Ganju punches her stomach as a counterattack, making her spit blood, and then falling to her knees on the ground. Her ability even gets deactivated, while Ganju says that although she is a prisoner on death row, he is sad to have to kill someone from his teammate's family. Hearing this, Tomoki with a hopeful look asks if he could spare her. She even lowers her head and says he is a hero, but Ganju says he is no longer one. Despite this, she continues begging for him to spare her, grabbing his leg and saying she doesn't want to die. Hearing that he says this kind of situation now is something she must have seen several times frequently, then he asks what she did with the people who begged her. Tomoki, crying, lets out a nervous laugh, seeing that there's no way out. Then Ganju delivers the final blow. The sound of his fight with the prisoners made the whole prison tremble. Even outside, Canis and Kato heard the bang. That sound made someone fall in love and caused fear in others, while for some, it only increased expectations even more. Inside on the last floor, Juan gets excited and decides he can't wait any longer and will have to go up. But he receives a blow that throws him far away, to the point of knocking off the hat he took from Ganju's brother. Juan is surprised by that attack. Someone appears asking if he's bored. An old man named Kingston asks if Juan wants Grandpa to play with him. The boy gets excited and calls him Scary Grandpa. The old man smiles, saying he's just a kind and friendly grandpa who likes to play with children. In the control room, two agents call for the director and ask her to look at the camera on the 5th sublevel. They are on alert with the encounter of Kingston and Juan, but the director says that's a good thing and says that means one of them will die. She hopes Kingston wins since he's not as dangerous as Juan, but she notices something strange. Then she wonders why the boy is keeping that woman in the air. The psychopath asks if the old man will play with him, and Kingston says he will, but the boy says he doesn't want to. The old man says he would love to play with him. Kingston was the first criminal to be imprisoned in Reculus, but unlike most of the prisoners on levels 4 and 5 who were imprisoned for killing millions of people, he killed only 3. His first victim was the villain named Caracas, who was the most powerful of his time. The other 2 victims were Clark and Hilo, the most powerful hero duo of the time. Kingston appeared out of nowhere and simply killed the 3 most powerful people in the world. He wondered if that made him the strongest person now. Then he said it was disappointing and then let the government arrest him. He was a threat to the world but surrendered after killing 3 people and got away with it because the government and the Hero Association didn't get along at the time. He managed to have his execution postponed for 30 years. After insistence, Juan agrees. With his ability, the corpses begin to move and start to float around him. Then he turns them into meatballs. So he says they can play a little and starts shooting the meatballs at the old man. But he remains immobile. Then with a gentle hand movement, he grabs one of the meatballs and throws it in another direction and starts repeating this at an absurd speed. In a matter of seconds, all the meatballs are behind him. It's as if they passed right through him. Juan looks indifferent, and the old man gives a small smile. He says he thought the boy used telekinesis, but realized it's not that by the way he attacked. Then he asks if he has any other attack. But Wang says he changed his mind and says it doesn't seem fun to play with the old man because it makes no sense to kill someone who's going to die of old age anyway. Kingston calls the boy arrogant and says he's seen a lot of people like him who think they're the biggest fish in the pond. He plants his foot on the ground, and with a push breaks the floor into several pieces. The old man says that acting that way they allow ego to get the best of them. In the control room, a dramatic agent is afraid when he feels the tremor and says the building is collapsing. The director says this building cannot be destroyed even by the power of first-class heroes since there are 20 layers of special walls. But in a sub-level, Kingston says he will teach the boy good manners and disappears from view with a jump. Hwang is intrigued, but suddenly realizes that the old man is about to hit a flying kick in his face. He comes within inches, and again another bang happens with the impact of the blow. The whole prison shakes and the director can't take the agent's drama anymore. Even Ganju feels the bang. Seon asks who won the fight, and the agent says that's not the problem. In the sub-level, Hwang looks surprised. Then the agent informs that Kingston destroyed all the walls. Hearing this, the director says they are screwed. Hwang says he's like a living drilling platform and asks how many walls he broke. He even considers following Kingston, but someone behind him asks why follow an old man. The woman smiles. It's the same one who was watching from outside the prison. She says it will be more fun for Hwang to stay there and talk to her. The director can't believe what she sees. Hwang asks the woman who she is, and Sinka replies that he will know more about her if they talk. From the control room, the director wonders who the hell that woman is and how she got to the 5th sub-level. But before continuing the conversation, Sinka points to the camera and says the viewers can go away, and then turns off the transmission. The director is very irritated. Meanwhile, Ganju arrives at another door. He announces that he has cleared the 1st sub-level and asks the director to open the gates of the 2nd sub-level. The director tries to speak. She asks him to wait, but the signal is interrupted. He says the signal must be bad in the underground floors, and then opens the doors by hand. Without any effort, as Ganyu descends the stairs, he notices something different from the 1st floor and the 1st sub-level. They smelled of blood everywhere, but there was no stench at all in the 2nd sub-level. In fact, there was simply no one, not even a corpse in sight. Everything was too clean, until he hears a scream. A girl in a prison guard uniform is running from 2 monsters. They seem to want to devour her, and she yells for them to stay away, until she notices Ganju and asks for help. At that moment, one of the monsters behind her is about to fire something from its mouth, but it is destroyed with a single blow from the protagonist. The girl falls to her knees on the ground and is surprised. Ganyu asks if she's okay, but the girl runs to hug him and again calls him Gangho. She says she thought he was on the 5th sub-level and asks why he never told her he had superpowers. The protagonist pulls her away from him. That explains that he is not Gangho but his brother. The woman is surprised to see that it is the hero Ganju. Then she asks what he is doing there in a guard uniform. Ganyu says she must be his brother's colleague, but it's not safe there. But she corrects him and calls him brother-in-law. He is surprised, then she says it's the first time they've met. The girl introduces herself saying she will be his sister-in-law and says they look very much alike. Ganyu is speechless. Meanwhile, in the solitary of the 2nd sub-level, a voice calls Mel. A person comments that there is someone outside, and the one agrees, then wonders how many sins the stranger has committed in his life. Mel then says the stranger killed her dogs. Then Male replies that they will send the stranger to hell. Gangho's colleague says she only saw Ganju in photos. She comments that the protagonist looks much more handsome in person and introduces herself as Hong Jie. Ganju says his brother mentioned he had a girlfriend but never talked about getting married. Hong is a little embarrassed and points to her belly and says she's pregnant, leaving the protagonist surprised. She says it's only been a few days since they found out. Gangho planned to tell the protagonist after Hwang's execution. Ganju asks if this is really true, then Hong confirms and asks if there is a problem. He says no but looks pained. She asks why he's there in uniform. Ganju replies that he was hired as a special agent to execute all Roculus prisoners. Hong is surprised and asks why he will carry out the executions, and realizing she doesn't know what happened, he starts to explain. After hearing the story, Hong is shocked. Ganyu says they are still investigating who carried out the attack. She asked about Gangho since he was on the 5th sub-level for the execution. Ganyu starts to speak, but seeing the look of concern on his sister-in-law's face, he simply can't. So he says there is someone sending signals from the 5th sub-level. Hong is relieved to hear that. Then the protagonist says he will take her to the upper floors, but she says she will stay because she can help him go down. Then he asks what led her to think that. Hong reveals she has the ability to read a person's memory by looking at them. But soon she tells the protagonist not to worry because she hasn't read his thoughts. She explains that she uses her ability to provide psychiatric help to prisoners to find out if they are really guilty or not. Ganju asks how they can help him. Then she says the entire 2nd sub-level is under the control of Meal and Mal, 2 siblings in solitary who have special and creation-type powers. They have the ability to summon creatures, and when they hit someone's heart, it turns the victim into a puppet. All the prisoners on the 2nd sub-level have become their puppets, but Ganju says he already knows this information because they were disciples of Mongo. So he says he doesn't need information about them and tells her to go back, but she refuses again because some of the siblings' puppets are penitentiary agents. She says the protagonist will not be able to differentiate the agents from the prisoners since they all became puppets, but she can use the memories to identify them. Gang Yu sees no point in differentiating them because he thinks they are already dead for having been turned into dolls, but Hong says they are still alive and will return to normal once they are freed from the siblings' power. The protagonist said that there's no way the brothers can do it, but she asks him to try. She is sure that she can convince them. Gang Yu worries about her safety and the babies, but doesn't matter. She says that before being a future mother, she's a prison officer with a duty to fulfill. Gang Yu ends up remembering his brother. After thinking a bit, he agrees. He uses his power, causing an energy to begin to surround Hong. She gets startled when the protagonist's ability lifts her into the air. A sphere forms around her, and then Hong asks what it is. Gang Yu explains that his power will keep her safe from any dangerous situation. She finds it strange and hopes it won't affect her body. They continue onward, until they encounter several creatures with halos. Hong says that this is Meal's power, and reminds the protagonist that other officers were captured, so he asks which of them are agents. She focuses, and activates her ability. With a look, identifies that the two behind are agents. Then she starts to talk about how Gang Yu should act, but the sphere begins to darken, until she can't see inside, to the point that her voice is even muffled. There is an easier way. He activates his power, and says the officers will be spared, then uses his ability to restrain them. Meanwhile, one of the creatures advances to attack him, but it only took a punch to finish it off. Gang Yu says the prisoners will be killed because this is the easiest way to separate the two groups. The creatures advance to attack in a group, but with a punch they are stopped, and before they could react, Gang Yu kicks, and with his ability, pierces all the creatures at once. From afar, someone watches him through a crystal ball. They are the two siblings. Mel asks her brother what he thinks. She questions if he is stronger than their master, and if he is stronger than the leader of equality. Meal remains silent. Mel hugs him in fear, but her brother tells her not to worry, because it will not be easy for Gang Yu to kill them. Hong yells from inside the sphere. She asks why the protagonist imprisoned her that way, then he apologizes for not having warned beforehand. When she asks what happened, Gang Yu replies that the prison guards have been taken to quarantine for now, and all the prisoners have been executed. Hong doesn't understand, then says the execution devices are on the 5th sublevel, but Gang Yu says he executed them himself. He asks if there is any problem with that, but she asks whose idea it was, being answered that it was his own. Hong asks if the director agreed, and he confirms that she did. She is silent for a moment, and with sorrow in her eyes, she starts to say something but can't. Gang Yu says nothing. She asks if he's okay, then he says he just fulfilled his duties as a prison guard and asks if there's anything wrong with that. But Hong says of course there is. She argues that a guard's job is not to kill prisoners but to rehabilitate them. But before she could continue, Gang Yu says he's tired of hearing these idealistic speeches all the time. Things like what Losa or his brother said. He knows very well the result of pursuing these ideals. The prisoners took countless lives of innocent people. Now it doesn't matter anymore whether he is a prison guard or a hero. He realized that he should have killed those who gave up being human beings earlier. Hong is frightened to hear this, and says they are also human. But Gang Yu doesn't believe what he hears. Then he asks if she's really saying they are human. From the 2nd sublevel are all criminals who killed hundreds or thousands of people. For Gang Yu, they deserve to die. In the past, there was a lot of controversy over the existence of the death penalty because many people died unjustly. But he says that since she has psychic ability, then she must have felt how they felt. Hong says they all have their own stories, especially Mel and Meal. But Gang Yu says everyone in the world has one, including the victims who also have their own stories. And lastly, he asks if it really matters if they are killed by him or executed by the death penalty. Hong tries to argue that the death penalty is only for individuals, but Gang Yu tells her to stop. He just wants her to stop talking, because if she continues, he will send her back, and will resolve the situation his own way. After this discussion, they continued forward, until they encountered another group of guards turned into creatures. Gang Yu asks her to say which are guards. After identifying them, he prepares. She looks at him with sorrow in her eyes, and says Gang Ho would be very sad if he found out what his brother was doing. Hearing this, Gang Yu gets angry. The creatures advance to attack him, but he doesn't move. One of them lands an attack right on the neck, but the blade broke without causing a scratch. Hong's words echo in his head, and remembering that, Gang Yu becomes increasingly possessed. While attacking, he reflects to himself that he always boasts, but feels angry and frustrated. In his mind comes the memory of Losa. He can't admit. Then comes the memory of his brother. While Gang Yu continues attacking the creatures, Hong is frightened seeing that, but he continues with the attacks. All the creatures advance at once. Some energy balls begin to form with his power. Gang Yu thinks about the frustration he carries, then activates mode 5 of his ability, and the balls hit all the creatures at once. He decides he will vent his frustration by killing the prisoners. In a matter of seconds, all the creatures were killed. Only a rain of blood remained, while Gang Yu thinks to himself that he will release his frustration even if it's just a little. From afar, Cinco watches him. Her eye appears to have some ability for this. She blushes and says he got even cooler. In the prison, Gang Yu continues moving forward, killing the creatures that appear, until they come across 3 prison guards transformed, but he notices something, and looking to the side, The door opens. From there emerge two people who say it's a pleasure to meet him. They are the two siblings, Mel and Meal. Gangyu says he can't believe they came to see him on their own, comments that it will be less troublesome for him, and says it's also a pleasure to meet them. Hong tries to talk to them, but Meal asks why she didn't go see them since she should have been sent to heaven. Gangyu tells them to deactivate their abilities, starts to accumulate energy in his hand, and says if they obey they will have a painless death. Meal asks if there is even an option where they will not be killed. Gangyu then explains that the prisoners of the first floor and the first sublevel had the option to use the control devices or not. He looks possessed and says the monsters on the second sublevel who killed countless people will have no choice but to die. Meal says he heard that Gangyu is a colleague of his master. Mel, clinging to her brother, talks about when Losa captured them and says Gangyu has a very different aura from her. Then she yells saying the protagonist will go to hell. He starts to charge energy again and says they will see who will go to hell first. Meal tries to negotiate, saying he will deactivate his abilities if Gangyu spares them, but he refuses. Hong tells them that will only make the situation worse. Meal recognizes her, then tries to convince that they have not committed any mortal crime and says she must understand them. Hong is worried to see that they refuse to cooperate. Gangyu says that will not work at all, and with a look of hatred says he will not negotiate with monsters. Hong starts to sweat cold. Gangyu says there is no other way, but it's okay, because monsters should not feel pain, so he creates a hammer with his ability. Meal says he does not wish to fight, and that maybe they can negotiate if he listens to their side of the story. But Gangyu immediately refuses. Hong asks him to talk to the siblings to resolve peacefully, but he covers her view again in the sphere, then with an irritated face asks her to be quiet, and stomps on the ground, which launches his power to bind the siblings. They scream in pain. Gangyu comments on the means to torture a villain. He is very familiar with such methods, and he says he didn't know there would come a time when this would come in handy. Hearing this, the siblings become afraid. Male says talking doesn't work because the protagonist is not a human being. His sister says they are not monsters. After hearing this, Gangyu is surprised. The two siblings he had captured were actually two transformed prisoners, but the voice of the siblings continues to speak in the background that they are humans with special powers. Gangyu kills the two prisoners without hesitation. The siblings question why people call them differently. They ask what the difference is between them and others, and more creatures appear. But at the same instant, Gangyu cuts off all their heads in the blink of an eye. While feeling extremely irritated, from afar, Male watches through the crystal ball, worried. Her brother is using the creatures to break the wall and asks if she needs help, but she denies. Gangyu's defense is very strong. She creates a magic circle with her power and uses it on the crystal ball. Then a giant magic circle appears in front of the protagonist. Right after several giant creatures appear, this is the power of a summoner. But Gangyu immediately lands a punch on one of the summons because for him, this is nothing compared to a real human being. He jumps and comes down, crushing the creature with a kick. It falls, causing a bang. The other summons surround him, but he activates his power, then with his red ray, and again cuts all the creatures with a single movement without suffering a single scratch. Mel is very worried to see that. She asks how long it will take, and Meal says there are still about 10 minutes left, but she says it won't be enough, and draws a little blood from her finger for a new summoning. But when she is about to use the crystal ball, a bang happens. The ceiling is destroyed, raising a lot of dust, and the siblings don't understand what happened. It was Gangyu who just arrived. Mel already falls into tears, seeing that there is a huge hole in the ceiling. Gangyu says that if he catches the siblings one by one, it will be the end of them, and tells them to deactivate their abilities so their deaths will be painless. Gangyu stares at the siblings with a look of hatred. They look at the hole he made in the ceiling and wonder how many abilities he has. But Gangyu approaches. Then he speaks again for them to deactivate their abilities. They are afraid, but Meal doesn't listen, and with a clap, creates some summoning circles above Gangyu. He looks up. 4 giant angelic creatures have been summoned: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. But at the same instant, Gangyu activates his power, and with a single kick, leaves the creatures in pieces. The siblings didn't expect that. Meal is speechless, but again creates a summoning circle, but this time he brought prison guards. Then he yells for Gangyu to stay away from them. Meal tries to negotiate using the guards as hostages, but Gangyu interrupts him again, telling him to release the guards. The brother hears a voice, and looking to the side, Mel is crying, trapped by Gangyu's power. The protagonist then says that if he doesn't release the guards, he will make his sister's death very painful. Saying this, the girl starts to scream in pain with Ganyu's power. She screams for her brother, while she agonizes in pain and cries more and more. After seeing that scene, Meal agrees to release the guards. He only asks that in return he can talk to guard Hong, but Gangyu again tells him to deactivate his ability. While the girl continues screaming in pain, he says he will only stop when Meal deactivates his power. Meal stays with his sister after having released the guards, both the guards and the prisoners. Everyone is without understanding what happened, but at the same moment, Gangyu kills all the prisoners there. The siblings are frightened. Even the guards are surprised. Then they ask Gangyu what is happening, but he only tells them to go back upstairs. They obey without questioning. Meal says that now that he has deactivated his ability, a protagonist should keep his promise. He says he will let the siblings talk to Hong. They are surprised, but Gangyu says it's better for them to go somewhere else first because that scene is not something a pregnant woman should see. Back to where guard Hong is. She asks what happened, but Gangyu says the job is done. After knowing that all the guards have been released, she asked about the siblings, and Gangyu says they wanted to talk to her before they died. Hong tries to say they can use the control device, but the protagonist tells her not to make him repeat. The monsters of the second sublevel who killed countless people will be killed by his own hands. Guard Hong is again astonished by that response, but Meal asks her if they really did something to be killed. He says they did nothing to justify their execution and asks her to say something about it. Gangyu asks her to be quick. She says the siblings' names and says they need to be killed. Upon hearing this, the siblings hug each other sadly. Hong tries to say something else, but in the end she ended up not being able to say anything else. Gangyu asks if they have anything else to say, but they say nothing. Then the protagonist says he will keep his promise. It's time to start the execution. Mel despairs and starts to beg for them to be spared. She clings to her brother tightly, but Gangyu goes to punch. A bang is caused, and after the dust settles, our protagonist is surprised, since their master has just appeared, creating a shield that protected them. The Mago, who was Gangyu's companion in equality, the siblings are surprised by that, and even Gangyu didn't expect that. Mago then asks what is happening there. Our video ends here. If you like it, leave your like. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.